out on the audio path and give us either digital audio or analog stereo audio.
And I know we're going to get deeper into it, but does it also carry the audio forward?
It does. Yes, it does. So it actually retains the audio on the HDMI signal path, and so you can pass it on to an AVR of some kind that you have, maybe an Apple TV plugged into, but it also breaks out the audio for stereo or for digital audio as well.
Yeah,
so.
One more question. Does it support 4K and HDR?
Yes, it does. It's an 18 gig device.
Fantastic. So, where do you want to start this morning, Adam?
Well, this morning's kind of interesting because we're actually doing a pre-recorded episode today.
For your viewing pleasure.
For your viewing pleasure. Brent's not going to be available for Wednesday's episode, so we are pre-recording today. So what we would have you do is I will be in the chat as this is going live. So feel free to leave any questions or comments that you might have about what we're talking about today, even if it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And again, if you are watching this as we go live with the video, thank you so much. Or if you're watching this after the recording as it goes up onto YouTube, we thank you again as well. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, leave it in the chat or leave it in the comment section below.
And one of the nice things about it being pre-recorded is actually Adam has a lot more time to focus on your questions and giving you answers.
Exactly, yeah. So definitely put those in there. And of course, I will be bringing up different things to talk about in the chat as well. Maybe there's something that I missed on today's episode that came to rise as we talk about it there. So
one more thing, this is not going to be a regular rule. I am getting educated this week, so I am unavailable tomorrow afternoon. Now, before we get deep into this, I do have a couple of questions. With all of what's happening with audio breakouts and with audio transmission, are we starting to see, and because you catch the phones more often than I do, has there been an increase in questions from dealers? And what are those questions?
Well, the biggest one comes down to, I have this device that doesn't have its own audio output on it, and I need to get the audio out of this device into my audio matrix or an audio distribution. Audio. Exactly. That's the primary problem that guys run into. It's our favorite question that we get from people. Mostly because it's not as difficult as it sounds.
Really? My favorite question is when they ask me, why am I so awesome?
Well, you don't get that very often.
I don't get that very often.
Yeah, not very often at all.
But that is my favorite question.
Yeah, and actually what I'm going to do here real quick, Brent, is I'm going to actually pull out of the rack over here a Roku Ultra that we use for testing purposes. And I'm going to unplug a couple devices here to have this
That is
available.
our test rack.
Yes, it is.
As we have mentioned many times, this is a working laboratory.
There we go. Okay, so now this is actually an older Roku. So it still has the optical connection on the back of it.
That is very much an older Roku.
Yes, it is.
I bought that. I'll tell you how old that is. I bought that at H.H. Gregg.
There you go. So before H.H. Gregg actually closed down. So this piece here, when you're looking at the modern Rokus or the Roku Sticks or the Fire Stick or the Apple TV or
the Fire Cube.
The Fire Cube, basically any kind of media streaming device now, they have all dropped.
The TV Shield?
The TV Shield.
TV?
Yep, the Shield, the NVIDIA Shield, pardon me. They have all dropped the optical connection or the separate audio connection. Yeah. So the problem with that is that now you don't have that connection to use anymore for the distributed audio systems, or if you have any other kind of amplifier that doesn't have an HDMI connection.
Or an older AVR that doesn't support 4K.
Exactly, yeah. So you might be using a switch that then you break out, or to go to the TV, but then you just have the audio going to the AVR. So with modern Rokus and with modern streaming devices, they have, for all intents and purposes, made our lives very difficult as installers. And so that's something that we really need to consider when we are doing installations.
And why did they do that?
To save money.
Exactly.
That's the only reason they did it. And not necessarily because not a lot of people are using it, because obviously everyone that's in our world is needed that and was using it, and we've all been in an uproar about that. But luckily, we have solutions. So the first problem that we run into is I've got a streaming device and I need to get audio out of that streaming device. Specifically, I need to get analog audio out of this streaming device. What do I do? Well,
it depends on whether or not you have multiple devices you're trying to extract audio from, or a single device, and are you sending it to an analog distributed audio system, or are you sending it to a digital input on an AVR?
Sure.
So, as we've discussed many times, the first thing you really want to do in a situation like this is think about your final goal. Piece of paper, or write down, I need to accomplish this, this, and this.
Yep.
Because that will help you determine which of the products we carry, or other manufacturers, although obviously, to determine what your end goal is.
Right.
If it is a single source we just need to break out, like you want to pull Pandora or Spotify or Amazon Music out of that,
right,
you would use one product. If, however, you have multiple devices, say an Apple TV or an Amazon or a Roku or a cable box, and you need to pull out audio from that, the beard. I've learned the beard is, when you fresh shave, it catches it.
Yep.
It's a different device.
Yep.
So you need to look at what your long-term goal is to know which of the devices helps your problem. So we're going to start with the simple one.
Yep.
I have this, and I just want to take, and I want analog audio going to my distributed matrix for my patio speakers, my kitchen speakers, maybe in the garage so I can listen to the game.
Yep.
Now, I might also want to send 5.1 audio to my AVR. What do you recommend?
Okay, so there's actually a couple ways to go about this. Now, what we can do first and foremost, the easiest way to do it, again, our sponsor for today is the AVO3. Very simply, it has an HDMI input on it, and it has an HDMI output on it. So you'll take the HDMI from the Roku or streaming device, whatever it may be, into the HDMI input, take the HDMI out, and continue on to whatever video distribution system you have in place. Then what you can do is very simply just use the analog audio output from there, or the Toslink connection, and take that into either your audio matrix, or if you have an AVR that has digital inputs on it, you can take it there, take it that way as well. Now ours has a 3.5 millimeter for the stereo output, so that's available to use as well.
Plain and simply, it's smaller, allows for a tighter fit. Now, here's where it gets a little odd. As good as that product is, I don't like to use the analog output on that.
Right.
I actually prefer to go into our DAC, our digital to analog converter.
Yep.
And why is that?
So with the digital analog, I don't know, you tell me.
Because I can fiber between the two, lift the ground, and not get any background noise.
Exactly. So you can actually go even just a short distance going from Toslink to
It does make a difference in the noise floor.
Yeah, it helps to get rid of that, which we had that discussion on noise floor before. Actually, pardon me, next week's episode is on noise floor. And so that will be very important. You're laying the groundwork for that there.
It is an extra product in the line, an extra power supply, but by lifting that ground, it really does make a difference.
Yeah.
And because it's pure fiber on the noise floor.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a really great connection. Now, one thing to consider with all of this is that you still have to worry about down mixing. You still have to make sure that your output, the audio output on your streaming device, is set to stereo.
Yes, it is. And here is why. In order to do proper down mixing, you do require a Dolby licensed product.
Right.
And there is a direct relationship between Dolby licensing and cost.
Correct. Yes, there is.
There are products out there that do that. They do it very well, but the pricing difference is dramatic.
Now, we do have one product that is brand new. It's not even in my warehouse here in Florida. It's actually in our warehouse out in California at the moment. It is the DAC 2. Now, the DAC 2 is an interesting piece because while it doesn't do Dolby audio, it does do multi-channel audio down mixing. So if you have it set to an LPCM audio source from your streamer, you can actually go out from there to your HDMI connection to the AVO3 and then go out the Toslink, still in a multi-channel setup, into the DAC 2. Now, of course, this is the original DAC, which does not do the down mixing, but the DAC 2 allows you to do the down mixing on an LPCM signal or multi-channel signal. So that way you can still get the analog audio or you can keep the surround sound audio from the streaming device going into your surround sound system. Say you have an AVR that's handling the surround sound, but then you can actually down mix into 2-channel audio. Makes life pretty easy, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a really great piece for that. From there...
Okay, so let's step back. Let's do a real quick recap on this. HDMI source into your audio breakout.
Correct.
Now, from your audio breakout, you've got a couple options. Obviously, video goes forward with HDR and all the cool stuff.
Yep.
You can run an optical out directly into the input on your AVR.
Yep.
For your 2-channel or multi-channel.
Yep.
Or you can come out of this into a digital to analog converter if you are worried about any noise floor issues and analog out of that.
Correct.
Now, let's say I have multiple devices that I need to get the audio out of. So I have an Apple TV, a Roku, maybe a cable box.
And let's take it even one step further. Let's say the reason that we're doing that is because we have an old AVR that we're just wanting to utilize because it's still
got a great
good
audio
AVR.
section.
Exactly. But it doesn't have HDMI, or maybe the HDMI portion of it has gone bad, but the audio input on it is still okay. So this is actually...
I got 2 of those in my garage.
Yeah, right? In fact, I think one of them's sitting down there.
No.
No?
I got 2 more.
You got 2 more? All right, so this piece is really great. This is the CS-HDM4X1 ASW4. Now, This solution piece is great because, like Brent was saying, if you have multiple devices that you need to get the audio out of before it gets to the display, this is great because it's an HDMI switch, an 18 gig HDMI switch.
Supporting HDR.
Supports HDR, but it also has the audio breakout. And in fact, I'm going to give us here a little shot of that. So you can see there, you actually have all of your HDMI output, or pardon me, inputs and your output. There's actually one on the front as well.
Which is really good for Fire Sticks, Roku sticks.
Yeah, exactly.
And other small boxes.
Something a little bit smaller. Now, you'll also see that you've got the buttons there on the side. Now, one interesting thing that you will see on there is the inclusion of an ARC button. So what's nice about this is that you are able to actually take a smart TV that has the smart functions built into it using the ARC function and send the audio back to this HDMI switch, and it breaks out the audio onto your connections there. So it makes for a really great setup in case you have to use a smart TV of some kind in order to get the streaming services. And so it's a great feature for that as well.
Now, if you can switch me back over to the overhead for a second.
There you go.
The remote that comes with it does give you the ability to do all of your input selections and your ARC control. And the codes for this are online, so you can easily add it.
Yes, they are.
To any device. Is there a Control 4 driver?
There is, yes.
So we're already way ahead of the game.
Exactly. So with this here, great piece, if you need to break out the audio from an HDMI connection, and more multiple HDMI connections, because you have multiple devices, whether because you have an AVR that doesn't have HDMI or a bad HDMI port, or maybe you have another type of system where you would rather not send the audio to the TV and then break out from the TV. You can break it out before the TV at that point. In fact, the reason you would want to do that, what we see sometimes is that some displays, if you send a Dolby signal to the display,
they don't like it.
They don't like it. Some displays don't break out a Dolby audio signal, whereas a piece like this will break out a Dolby digital signal. So if you go
when you select it on the front of the unit, 2.1 or 5.1, it sends the correct EDID to tell the source what to do.
Exactly. So
that's what that button's actually for.
If you have like a Roku or something and you're going directly to the TV with an HDMI connection, most TVs will have a Toslink output. Now, however, some TVs don't output a Dolby digital signal on that Toslink output.
Or they don't accept it on the HDMI, but they will output it on the internal apps.
Yep. But with this here, you actually can break out that Dolby digital signal on the digital connections before it gets to the television and before the television can mess with it. So it's a really great solution for that as well. So,
now, another one that I do really like, and you and I suggest this a lot, is the D2D.
Yes.
And why would you use a D2D? So
this is kind of an interesting application for this because, again, let's say we only have the television, right? Let's say it's a smart TV, we have it up in the guest bedroom or one of the kids' bedrooms or whatever, in-ceiling speakers, and we want to get the audio for those in-ceiling speakers from that television. Now, I don't have a fiber cable running all the way from that guest bedroom or the kids' bedroom all the way back to the rack. I only have a coax connection. So, in that type of application, what I can do is very simply put in a D2D. This is the CS-D2D, very simple, very straightforward. And what that piece does is it will take the input of either a Toslink or a coax, and then it will output the opposite. And so there's a little switch here that will give you Toslink or coax to actually select which one you want to use. We'll bring it a little bit closer there. There you go. And there's power there on the USB, or there's power here on the side. So DC 5-volt power. Now, with this piece, it's great because, like I was saying, if you have a television or something in one of the rooms that's far away, but you only have a coax cable going from that room back to the rack, you can now convert the Toslink connection over to a coax connection, send it back over that coax cable, and either put another one of these in place to switch it back to Toslink if you have to, or if you can go directly into an AVR of some kind that has a digital input on it, then from there you can just go directly from the coax at the television into the coax of the AVR from this.
Much more reliable than ARC.
Yes, it is.
One of the biggest reasons we push this is guys will call looking for an alternative to ARC.
Yep.
And this absolutely does it as long as they have a coax there.
So one of the things that we also run into, another typical thing that we have is people who have trouble hearing, and they have to have certain assistance devices, whether they be headphones or a Bluetooth module that links up with hearing aids or something like that. But usually in those types of applications, they allow a Toslink connection. Now, the problem is that let's say I'm also wanting to use a sound bar whenever I'm watching the TV and someone else is needing to have that type of assistance. Or, for that matter, you just want to wear headphones whenever you're listening to whenever you're watching TV late at night.
And not have the sound bar turned on to wake up your spouse.
Exactly. So, in most cases, those soundbars do not have a pass-through Toslink. Very rarely, in fact, I've never seen one. But what you could do is very simply take something like this here, which is do you have the box for that by chance? Because I never remember this one. There it is. This is the AS-1X3TSPLIT.
Wow.
Right? So this one here, very simply, it will take one Toslink input and it will output to 3 different Toslink outputs. It's a very simple Toslink splitter. In these types of situations, when you have to split up a Toslink cable, that's really the only way to do it. There are other types of splitters out there and different converters and whatnot that you can do. But instead of taking a Toslink connection, converting it to coax, and then having a coax splitter in place, and then converting it back over to Toslink with one of these.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Put one of these in place and make that connection there. So.
Wow. So there's a lot going on there to solve the problems.
Yeah. So, and these are things that we run into as installers out in the field that, hey, I have this device and I need to get the audio from this device somewhere else. And whether it be an HDMI device that does not have an audio output, or if it's a digital device that has a digital output but I need an analog output, or if you have the wrong type of digital output and I need to convert it over to the other one.
There are some TVs that are only digital coax out.
Right.
And I don't know of any sound bar that's digital coax in that's current.
Yeah, there's digital coax, not so much anymore. Everyone's kind of switching over to the Toslink style connection.
And do you know why that is?
Probably for the grounding issues.
Economics.
Economics? Mm-hmm. Yeah, is it cheaper to do that?
It is less expensive to do the fiber because you're maintaining the whole system as you're not having to do a breakout, you're not having to adapt anything. So it works simple.
Yeah. So with the issues that we run into out in the field with the different devices that we have to convert from one signal type to another, are there any other odd applications that you've run into out in the field that would necessitate even maybe just an interesting use case for one of these? Maybe one that you never really thought of as using it that way.
You know, it's more about older gear, and we took a call on that yesterday.
Yeah.
That you're just trying to take a modern source device.
Yep.
And connect it to an older AVR. Look, there's a whole lot of AVRs out there that are $1,500, $3,000, $4,500 that sound awesome.
Yeah.
There's a lot of high-end pre-pros that sound awesome, but with HDMI you cannot stay fully up to date. It's impossible.
Right.
And particularly when you're spending anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 for a pre-pro.
Yep.
You don't want to just chuck it out the door because something new comes along.
Right.
When it's got great audio. And for a lot of people, audio is the overriding factor.
Yeah.
That's where these devices come in. Now, one other one that I use a fair amount, and we'll talk about it again next week, is actually the little keystone that has the stereo mini input that will allow you to take a piece of Cat5 and run analog audio back off a headphone jack. Actually still do a fair amount of those.
Yeah. And if you just need to send an audio signal, real
just an
short
analog
distance
audio
or something.
signal. Really up to about 100 feet over Cat5, you're fine.
No, then that's not
Use
too bad.
the orange pair and the green pair.
Orange pair and the green pair?
They're the same twist ratios.
The twist ratios. There you go. That way, again, timing. You get everything back to the same area and at the same time so you don't get some weird audio.
And it's a great way to get back into an analog system if all you have is a piece of Cat5.
Right.
And there are other options for digital over Cat5 that we will discuss in next week's episode.
Yeah, so next week's episode is actually interesting. We're going to be talking about taking the audio signal that we've now converted or changed in some way, and now we are actually transmitting it a long distance. In fact, one of our pieces can go really long distance.
Yeah, that's an awesome piece.
Yeah, that's a great piece.
I'd like to thank Stuart for that.
Yeah, Stuart brought that piece in and really put some thought into that one. So it's a great piece. If you need to go extra long distances, we'll talk about that one.
Yeah, and there's a lot there. So don't forget, while it is not live, Adam will be online answering all your questions on Wednesday.
Yep.
As usual, our phone numbers and emails are readily available to you.
Yep.
I am out of the loop this week from 10:45 Eastern Standard Time till 6:15 every day Eastern Standard Time.
Right.
Getting continuing education so I can be as smart as Adam.
Well.
Yeah. maybe not. Certainly not as young or as beautiful.
So
but we're trying to stay on top of everything for you guys as well.
Before we go too far, I do want to talk about the gentleman who called in yesterday, who had the B&K
Reference
AVR.
20.
Yeah, now that
Not
piece...
an AVR.
No?
Pre-Pro.
Pre-Pro. So that piece was before the year 2000.
Yes, it was.
Now, HDMI, of course, really became prevalent in 2000...
Well, first off, it did not exist realistically before 2005.
Exactly. So, any
on a
piece from
piece of
before
paper,
then,
but...
Sure, yeah, everyone, they were trying to come up with something for years and years until...
Yeah, Firewire in the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. So, when this piece came out, of course, HDMI was just...
Point. This device did not even...
Base with us on. Definitely leave it down in the comments, or you can email or call us directly with any questions or any ideas that you might have. And actually, let us know if there was an odd thing that you did with your setup, that you had to do some crazy configuration to get an audio signal from one device over to another in some weird configuration. Let us know what that was. And maybe you had to convert more than just a digital to analog signal. Maybe you had to convert a digital to a digital signal with a specific device because you needed something like a Pro Logic audio instead of a Dolby digital audio. Maybe you needed something different that way, and you found a device that would do that. Let us know. I'm very curious in these types of setups to see how you are doing the conversion process and how you're getting the type of audio that you need from one device to another.
Don't forget, reboot early.
Reboot often.
And what did we have to do today on the camera?
Reboot early, reboot often is what we did. And of course, label everything. Don't cut your wires too short.
Wow.
Yeah, right?
There's always one more that you forget.
Don't cut the wires too short.
Okay.
There you go. So everybody, I'm Adam.
I'm Brent. Have a great day.
We'll see you next time.